I'm Mr. Rosansky, and this is a speed run of Practice Test 5, the second module, the C module, the hard one. And let's get this started by heading to our first conventions question, which is going to be somewhere around here. Late conventions. It's on 16 conventions. We're going to check for our omega considerations. I see verbs. I consider what they are. It's so weird that they are capitalized, but we don't have necessarily a strategy for something like that. So we'll just go through with the bread and butter singular, singular, both singular. We put he and they before them. This is a neither, and this is a plural. That they're capitalized makes it so weird. We're at the start of the sentence. These verbs that tell me when are just going to be absolutely awkward. It's going to be one of these two. We consider, is it a reduced passive, or are we going with this creating? Created by William A. Brown, the saloon. The saloon, which was created, so we're going to do that reduced passive for this one. C falls, absolutely bizarre. Haven't ever seen a question like this. 17. We're going to check for our omega considerations. Again, we have verb. These seem to be a little bit more comfortable. We've got a singular, a singular, a singular, and a plural. I'm going to bias the odd man out, go looking for a subject. I've got a little bridgy poo here, so I'm going to back out, come back in for a moment. Such a weird deja vu moment for something like this. I've got a bridge that I'm going to read here. Objects, objects right here. Quitodian is a word that was on a tough transition question on the most recent SAT that just happened. So crazy. It was a transition question. Bizarre. So bizarre, in fact. Sorry, I'm wasting so much time on this question, but what a revelation this is. So we've got a little bridgey poo. I go over the bridge, find objects. Objects is plural, pick D. We've got 18 omega considerations. What do we got here? We do have the complete sentence mix-up is what this seems to be. I've got A is offering my lonely, comma. We've got a space in B. We've got the beauty in C, and D is my lonely co. So I'm going to bias C, but go looking for a complete sentence on either side. You would just read it, and would you put a period? Wax paper allows. This right side's looking gorgeous. Subject is wax paper. Allows is the verb. Do I've got one on the right side? I've got an allows right there. And then clear glass. Two complete sentences cannot be joined by any of this trash. So we're going to pick C and move on. 19. Conventions. Again, let's do our omega considerations. If we stop putting things in trash cans, omega considerations, what have we got? We've got a singular, because these are omega consideration verb. We've got singular, singular, plural, singular. So I'm going to bias the odd man out, go looking for a subject. Obviously, I'm not going to go into this little dashed off phrase here. What's this crazy colon doing? We've got our subject right here. The idea that various, never mind, the idea that the various culture that a person has, whew, this one's crazy. Love the trekking of the odd man out. This is its own little clause. The that isn't there to prove it. Then we have our subject here. The various cultural and ideological frameworks underlie each emotional reaction that a person has within a situation. This isn't a positive phrase, and that's what this colon's doing. So my subject is frameworks, verbs is underlie. Pick it and move on. Conventions, omega consideration, transition is absolutely popping. I see the shapes for it. I am going to check to see if I have a complete sentence on either side. So while doing that, rumba, samba, cha-cha, all these things, dash, the last of which, that's a dependent clause right here. So we are going to take our semicolons off the table because we don't have a complete sentence to the right. Then I'm in a weird little pickle. Not often do we see a colon involved in these. Does the right side exemplify the left? The five things are an example of only five of these dances of the five are an instantiation of the five things that are included in international dance. A is going to be the right answer. We got 21 omega considerations. What do we got here? We have the complete sentence mix-up again. We've got the lonely Coco. We've got the lonely comma. We've got the space, and we've got our beautiful little choice here. I'm going to bias the odd man out. We just need to check for a complete sentence to the left. When it comes to their diets, goats do be very indiscriminate. Look at these little goats. They jump on whatever they want. They eat whatever they want. Then we look to the right side. Does the right side exemplify or instantiate the right side? They will devour all kinds. Yes, they do be hungry, hungry goats. The right side instantiates is the left. So we kind of dip to the final four to confirm that this colon is doing what it's supposed to be doing. There is a complete sentence to the right. Notice there's no list, but that's okay. Colons are very crazy in the things that they can do to the right side. We are now on our transition questions. I looked to the left. She found that the snowpack was deepest in early March at lower elevations, maybe sequence or contrast at higher elevation. So we're dealing with some sort of contrast right here. We're just comparing two things. So comparison contrast, on the other hand, is going to be our bid. Next transition question 23. I looked at the left side. According to his law, countries with, oh my gosh, single ballot majoritarian elections for single members, we are going to have to highlight some things. Districts tend to polarize into two-party systems. This defines two-party systems. Countries with proportional representation, single ballot, these seems to be different things. So my initial consideration is that I'm comparing two things because these seem different. I like to tend to support multi-partyism, two-partyism. Here's another thing that's different. Two-party v multi-party, and this is under which party gets so these little clauses would these dependent clauses would help us define these things. I do see that they're different. I'm not subsequent to anything. We're not instantiating because they're different. They're different things. B conversely is going to be our answer. Logically, transitions. A turtle shell appears external to the animal, protecting its body like armor. The shell is often incorrectly assumed to be an exoskeleton. What have we got here? I feel like I've got some sort of cause. Since it appears external, it's incorrectly assumed to be an exoskeleton. Sense, cause, and effect, we are dealing with a D right here. This would be some sort of contrast or concession contrast comparison, or instantiation. This is because it appears, they incorrectly assume. We're on to the next one. We have in retrospecto didn't mean to do that. Genome project is affected by many factors. One of the lessons of the project is that gene is affected by many factors. This little clause initial contrasting phrase I'm going to ignore. I'm going to grab something from over here. Gene is affected by many factors. Efforts to better understand gene manipulation have begun to consider the human protein, the complete set of human proteins. I'm kind of feeling like a cause and effect is because the gene is affected by many factors, and then we can use this to define factors, protein production of other genes. They have begun to discover or investigate the human protein, which is a complete set of proteins. So I'm not grabbing my contrast from inside of here, and I'm not necessarily going into these yellow portions that I've highlighted for my ideas. It's just each one defines the thing before it, so I can comfortably say that I'm dealing with some sort of cause and effect. Because it's affected by many factors, they've investigated the protein. Because the factors are many proteins, proteins to protein. Proteins to protein. A similarity between the two sculpture is going to be the parsed out goal that I've got here. Two figures, this seems to be one, this seems to be two, both show, and this is currently a pretty cute choice. This is a difference. The completion, sure, they were both completed by a person, but they're different. I'm going to double check to show if they do these things. Both show acronyms that symbolize supportive relationships. Symbolize the support. I love that. And this one symbolizes supportive relationships. I love B so far. The recognition have features that are round and distinct. This is a difference. B is the right answer. Pick it and move on. 27. I want to indicate a category which most routine indicate which category most routine correspondences belong in based on how sensitive information is classified. Okay, I can deal with that. According to the US government, which classifies as such information as routine diplomatic, so the government classifies as the thing, confidential such as, this is given an example of one, confidential, which category, most routine, which classifies such as, I don't have an idea for most routine, but I'll leave that on. Most routine is classified according to the degree to which disclosure could affect the nation's security. What I don't like about B is it doesn't indicate which category that they would go into. So I'm going to take B off the table. Having the potential to damage national security if disclosed, most routine correspondence is classified as confidential. I like this. Is this true? Most routine diplomatic correspondences, if disclosed, could cause damage to national security. Having the potential to damage national security could cause damage. It's not making a wrong claim about how serious the damage is. So how is it classified? Secret could cause serious. Information that could cause damage is classified as confidential. C is true. If disclosed, communication with that could affect. This isn't indicating the category which diplomatic falls into. I would need to access the definition for it. C is going to be the right answer. I forgot to take A off the table a long time ago. Back to our first question. We've got vocab 1, logically and precise. Then that, so I'm comparing something. The signal element shows that I'm comparing these people. I want to go back a little. But is going to be another signal element, kicks me back to undoubtedly made a substantial impact on society. So she definitely made an impact on society, but her place in historical memory is perhaps more weak, seems to be my initial suspected word, is my anticipatory word, who invented incredibly strong and accomplished, which, yeah, I've got like this weak or unknown. As I look at these, tentative both fits my anticipatory words of unknown and weak. We're on to question 2. We are, ooh, look at this little signal element. The team showed that such alterations, I've got this is leading me to this, which is kicking me back to this one. So I know this right side is definitely going to be where I want. The team showed that such alterations can be measured from a distance and we've got another signal element that's showing me the two things that this semicolon is accessing here, can reveal concentrations. So with this idea, I'm going to go back to the sentence. To demonstrate that the integrity of pipes can be assessed without unearthing, engineer Salim and colleagues, I like used or measured, used the tendency. I like used for this. Use the tendency of some metals is my anticipatory word, and that's going to match to exploited. Doesn't show used, doesn't show used. This should be expressing some sort of change. They just use the fact. Exploited is kind of a spicy word. 3, I'm going to start looking for signal elements, and I've got a colon right here. The left side of the colon, despite the generalizations about human behavior that many studies of behavioral psychology have used highly unrepresented. So this is a bad thing. For example, of the highly unrepresentative sample pools, students at the college, oh, I'm out of the same sentence. My bad. I just saw this colon in right form. We can find this, which is going to kick us back to this so that we can understand what the situation is. Students goes where they convenience sampling is kind of like what they're doing for this methodology. So to fix this situation, it is necessary to actively recruit subjects from diverse backgrounds. I want to fix this situation, ameliorate. Man, when in doubt, fix and ameliorate. When in doubt, pick ameliorate. The classic SAT question answer. 4, I'm going to look for signal elements and context clues. I've got this little dash, which is probably functioning like a colon. Traits the two groups of mammals independently developed in response to equivalent roles in their respective habitats. I like that. Then I start my sentence reading it, seeing that I've got contrast. Though they aren't related, the hedgehog of Madagascar share basic like qualities with or share basic traits, relations to, examples of, maybe, concerns about, absolutely off the table, indications of, examples of, share basic examples of true head. No, this is just an awkward way to use that word. False, false. Similarities with, qualities with, and I like the way that this seems to be working in this environment. On to 5, we've got another word choice question. 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, another word choice question. I am looking around. I see this signal element. While recent scholarship has undermined claims that the works of 12th century Islamic philosopher were blank of his time, it is undisputable. So we're dealing with like a double mix-up here. So I'm going to slow down for a second. I'm going to engage first with this since there's no puzzle piece here. He was certainly, and then we've got this while X inbound. He was certainly, it is undisputable that his location in the ruled area of what is now Spain meant that his works were primarily available thousands of miles west of the Aris. He was certainly far, 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 far from the center of Islamic thought. He and his work were certainly far, 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 far from the center. So now I need to unpack this first part. While recent scholarship has undermined claims, while research, I'm going to invert it, research shows that he other philosophers, so I like right here that like he mattered to, or impacted are going to be my anticipatory words. So then the opposite of those would be like did not matter or did not impact, because I'm inverting the undermine of the claim. So controversial, impacted, antagonistic, both of these are going to fall. Antagonistic towards, that's not what we're saying. He was far away. I want impacted or mattered. Imitated would be if I forget to invert it, while inconsequential. So he did have a consequence on, he did impact other ones. We're inverting it because of the undermining claims here. Then I plug that all back in and I land on inconsequential too. Whew, crazy little question. What is the function of the underlined sentence? Who, however, brave-hearted, we're first going to summarize this guy. Who, however, brave-hearted, and even much of a daredevil, who he was brave, daredevil. He seems nevertheless to have, I don't know what that word means. We're going to say, I don't know what that word means. Throughout many parts of his career, patience, we're going to consider it to be, he developed a singular patience. He developed chillness. So let's start engaging with these items and see what we've got here. It implies that he treasures a particular characteristic of his personality, that he does that. So this is pushing it inward. Who, however, brave and even seems nevertheless to have gained, is what I think that word means, throughout many parts of his career. I don't get the notion of treasured. That shows that he would love this. It's just that it might have not. I like A. If it weren't for the singular patience and mildness, then he would have succeeded. I don't have anything to support the spiciness of treasures. It shows why he would not have been able to undertake the enormous amount of labor necessary to run a farm, even if he wouldn't have been able to take over he was patient and mild. No, this is like cowardice. I'm going to change chilledness to cowardice, and I'm going to take C off the table. Being a coward doesn't mean that he couldn't run a farm. It's just someone fleeced him because he was a coward. It explains why the situation requires it. When the situation is able to undertake courageous act, oh, I have cowardice. I'm taking this off the table. So I'm going to read the surrounding text just to make sure I like my answer on this one. His employer, I'm going to pause to cough. And we back. His employer proving false in the country and there no law in the country forced him to fulfill it. Israel was obliged to look around. Yes, he got fleeced. It's if he weren't so patient and mild, he would have been able to acquire his land. Text structure, let's read this and start chunking it. I grab up here and we are going for it. So changes to vegetation cover and other human activities influence carbon. Carbon and nitrogen are affected by humans and cover, but how the extent is unclear. So this is like the research question kind of seems to be, or like the recognition of what the problem is. We form a hypothesis. We form a hypothesis that differences in land use lead to differences in carbon and nitrogen levels that are not restricted to the topsoil. So the difference in land, about difference in land use, sampled soils, looking at different soil types in Ethiopia. They found though that across land use type, they found that land use types carbon. They found though that across land use to carbon and nitrogen decreased to comparably low. That it had no impact. So hypo-bodied. Let's start putting this on the table. Separate this into three. It describes a phenomenon that scientists do not fully understand. I can just grant that. Explains the research team's hypothesis. I'll grant that. And then describes refine the hypothesis. We have no statement about they're moving to refine it, but we'll leave it on the table. It introduces an unresolved scientific question. I love that. Presents a research team's hypothesis. It does that. And then describes an observation made by that team that conflicts with the hypothesis. I like that. Their observation was that nitrogen decrease, and the though is showing me that it conflicts. So I'm going to take A off the table. It discusses the process that scientists are somewhat unclear about. Sure. Introduces we don't have competing hypotheses. It explains the hypothesis that we don't have any idea that there's been debate going on. Whoops, B is going to be my right answer. On to 8. 2 responds to text 1. Let's get to reading text 2 first. He is responding to text 1. So with this one, Baroque paintings utilized very similar color palettes to Renaissance paintings did. They used similar colors. Automatic artistic style classifiers, often style classifiers, struggle to make them distinct, but they were able to find a way to automate by running on top. So much potential for innovation seems to be this. Now I'm on to text 1. What is it saying is the claim? Efforts to automate classification of paintings into different arts have had little success, and we have not. No, we can run them on top. So much more possibilities is going to be this one for 8. So by emphasizing they're still advanced, I love this one. By criticizing previous research into automated, no, he wouldn't be mad about that. By criticizing previous research into automated artistic style classifications for focusing, it wasn't that they were focusing on a narrow group of styles. If anything, he would criticize the technique, but I don't have evidence for that. By arguing that most people are not able to, that a person's not able to do it, would have nothing to do with the automated processes. By suggesting that people may develop more uniform standards and they're bounded. By suggesting that people just like give it weight and time, that's just bizarre. I don't see the relationship to this. Maybe in the part that I didn't read would support that. it can be most reasonably inferred from the text that the finding about the microorganism community composition was important. For which reason? This is like an according to based on, so let's read this to find a detail. To understand how temperature changes affect microorganisms, mediated cycling of soil, nutrients, and alpine ecosystems, they collected these things. I want a conclusion, so it's going to be late. Crucially, microorganism community composition was unchanged, allowing them, this is what matters, microorganism community composition was unchanged. It allowed them to attribute the acceleration to temperature-induced, I just keep rereading the same sentence over and over again because it's a lot. Microorganism community composition was unchanged. Microorganism MCC did not change, so they allowed to attribute the acceleration to temperature. So since MCC did not change, the accelerated temp-induced increases were because microorganism activity. Geez Louise, there are so many words that I feel like I'm just saying over and over again, but they're different. So we're going to start. It provided preliminary evidence that the microorganism mediated nutrient was accelerated in this. It's unchanged. No, it provided preliminary evidence that microorganism mediated was accelerated in the transplanted cores. We knew that was happening. We knew that was happening to understand how temperatures. So this wasn't preliminary evidence. They already knew that it was happening. On to B. It suggested that temperature-induced changes in microorganisms may be occurring at increasingly high elevations. I don't have any evidence to support that. It ruled out a potential alternative explanation for an acceleration in, yes, it ruled out a potential alternative explanation. People could have said that the microorganism community composition could change, and that created the acceleration. But since they could rule that out, they were able to attribute it to this. It clarified that microorganism activity vary depending on which microorganism. No, it was unchanged, it said. That goes against it. We are on to tables. We're going to complete the statement. Mean ratings for patients after 21 days. Compared to mean ratings after 21 days for participants in the control group, the mean ratings for participants who were aware of taking the placebo, all right, ranged from 5 to 9, indicating that well-being changed. Compared, I don't like that I'm not doing two things, but we'll leave him on the table. We're lower for 2 measures, higher, I don't like that. That's a liar. Ranged from 3.9, no, patients who were aware that they were taking a placebo did not range from 3.9 to this. It wants me to mess them up. Mean rating for in the control group. Mean participants who were aware of taking a placebo. Yeah, this one. We're higher for all 3 measures, indicating greater. Yes. So now we are comparing between these two things. It's saying it's making a claim. The mean ratings for participants who were aware of taking were higher for all 3 measures. That's absolutely true, indicating that greater well-being for these. That's true. Range from 5 to 9, indicating that well-being wildly. I'm going to read back a sentence. Seems compared to the mean ratings for participants who were aware of taking them. This seems to only be focusing on one side. Range from. This gives me both comparisons. This is making me make inferences about the comparison. This one falls. We are again on another chart question. We are supporting the researcher's conclusion. After analyzing the results, the researchers concluded that longer leave might not lead to more cog benefit as compared to shorter leave times. So that seems to be a decent summary of the quote. So I'm going to go to the chart. In the second test administration, participants who took 2 to 4 days of leave, had higher average attentive scores than those who did not take leave. No leave, true. But in the third test administration, those who took no leave had a higher scores than those who took 1 to 5. So 11A, it's all true right now. But what am I trying to show? That longer leave does not lead to more cognitive benefits. took 4 had no. So the first part of this is false. It would go against this. Even though the second part's true, why would I have half of the evidence to refute my claim? In the first test administration, participants who took 2 to 4 days of leave, in the first estimate, 2 to 4 days of leave, had lower attentiveness scores than those who took 1 to 5 weeks of leave and those who took both. So this is true. Longer leave might not. So this one, but then 1 to 5. So the longest one was shorter than this mid one, so that would refute the claim. See, in both the second and third administrations, participants who took 2 to 4 days of leave were in the center, had higher attentiveness scores than participants who longer leave times may not support this. I like this. This is the longer leave time, lower attentive. Longer leave time, lower attentiveness. Now we're on to D. In the second and third, participants who took 2 had higher than this would hurt their claim. Higher is better. D falls. C is the right answer. Most uses data to escape the text. My bad on this one. As evidenced by the fact. What's evidenced by the fact? The energy exploitation of exploiting full speed. Full speed is bad even in escape contexts. Full speed is bad even in escape contexts. Most lizard species use about the same percentage of their maximum when escaping as most lizard species, the same percentage of their maximal speed when escaping predation. No. This is a huge difference. That's a liar. Multiple species move at an average of less than 90%. Multiple lizard species use an average of less than 90% when escaping. This one's true. I like it so far. More lizard species on average. More lizard species use 90 to 100% of the maximum when while escaping. This would refute it. Full speed is bad. If this is true, this is bad. At least 4 lizard species use on average less than 100% while pursuing. No, we want escaping predation. 12 is that one. We're illustrating the claim. What's the claim? Acknowledges its merits while also expressing a sense of displeasure, nor is it valid to discriminate against business documents and school books. All these phenomena are acknowledged merits while also displeasure, nor is it. I'll leave that one on the table. One must make a distinction, however, when dragged into the prominence by half poets, the result is not poetry. This seems to be all negative. I want both sides. When poems become so derivative that they become unintelligible, the same thing may be said for all of us, that we do not admire what we cannot understand. This is all negative. Reading poetry, however, with a perfect contempt for it, so this is negative, one discovers that there's a place for the genuine. So even if you go to, okay, this is the while. It has its merit. A place for the genuine also expresses a sense of displeasure, perfect contempt. A falls, D is the right answer. Logically completes the text. Based on these findings, what are my findings? Grab something here. TN has long hind legs, short wings, long necks. Characteristics that, combined with the large crested head, would have made sustained flight is tough, walking upright is easy. Based on these findings, they have this idea. So let's see if we can engage with this right where we are. Flew for longer distance. No, I don't like this. They would fly for shorter. Flight is tough. Had longer wings than this T-sources computer, than others considered to have been. Nope. Everything that I have so far seems to be leading me to the fact that they love walking, considered to be, I'll leave this on the table, had a smaller head than researchers' expectation. I don't really know where I would get the notion of the researcher's expectation. Flew for shorter distance and spent more time walking than previously thought. I love this. This engage. Sustained flight is tough. Walking upright is easy. The findings suggest that they probably did this thing. B falls. D's the right answer. We are on hopefully the final one. Absolutely. To the extent that these works are representative of Aztec thought. To the extent that they represent Aztec thought. Holy smokes, there's a ton of words over here. To the extent that they represent Aztec thought. P reveals that these works present an ethical, so we're taking your time. We have 2 minutes and 37 seconds. We're going to be fine. He reveals these works present an ethical system in which an individual's actions are judged by how it fits person's role. Actions judged, because we had that and, actions judged go to the individual, and how well person contributes. No, that would be actions. How well the actions contribute to the community. Yeah. How well the actions contribute. Okay. To the extent that these works are representative of the thought. So that's just like a vacuous statement there. When I go here, we've got P reveals that these works, posit an X, these works present an ethical system in which an individual's actions are judged in light by how well they accord with the individual and how well they. I want to go back to these works because it's saying these works twice. Is there a different work that's relating to this? Is my question. A very different view. A different view from what? Some ethicists hold that moral action, most modern, I don't know what's modern, requires no person. It's only this. Extra requires no context. Okay, so we have to dig in. The Aztecs would have disputed the idea that the morality of an individual's actions can be assessed. They would have clapped back against it, can be assessed by appealing to standards of behaviors that are I like this one. They would have disputed the idea that the morality of an individual's action can be assessed by appealing to the standards of behavior that are independent. No, you have to. What are the person's role? That aligns perfectly with this. I love A. The Aztec would not have accepted the notion that the morality of an individual act could be fairly evaluated by people who do not live in the same society. No, you don't. I don't see anywhere near that they have to say you have to be a member. You just have to be able to contextualize the person's actions and the community. So I don't have evidence for that. Actions by members of Aztec society who contributed a great deal to the community could be judged as morally good, even if those actions were inconsistent, regarded as good in all time. No, they don't believe that there are actions that are good in all contexts. Similar actions performed by people in different roles in society that would have been regarded as morally good unless those. No, they don't. They don't believe. Not the unless. Yeah, A is the right answer for sure. This is going against, in these final seconds, I'll just say, this is going against the statement that an individual matters and the individual role matters. That last one was saying that unless there was like a condition, if one, then not the other. But you would just refute that. The conditions matter, is what you would say. Just in the nick of time.